content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you. What's good people? What's crack-a-lackin', man? What's happening? I'm the G with a PhD, man. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chases. First things first, man, I want to give a shout out to all the haters in the spot who might view the video right now or later. What's good, hater? Hope you're having a pleasant evening. And if you haven't done so already, man, when you come in, man, make sure that you like the video, man, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification button so you can stay on top of what's going on here on the Green Gorilla channel. You feel me? And the next order of business is to give a shout out to all the members of the Green Gorilla channel, man. I want to always do this, man. I know it's a long and laborious thing, but you know, it's just, you know, my way of showing appreciation for the people who support the channel, man. So let's get that out the way. You know, I want to give a shout out to Rais Muajid, 77 Base X, True King 337, Life of Commerce, Brian McMurray, Apex Prowler, K-Ron S, The Average Black Man, Anthony Davis, and BGS Ibmore. Big up to y'all, man. Big up to Raphael Brown, Professor Carlton Jones, Lionel Jean-Louise, Artisan MC, Damon Brown, Donnell 360, Herbert Lewis, Seven Coast Dojo, Roguish the Billmonger, Destro 1, and Pulpit 28. Big up to y'all. Big up to Michael Ross, Charles Rogers, Papa Didas, Travis King, Adam Williams, B. Hillfire, Rick Ross, Sandra Jean 955, Brotherly Love 215, Charles Gilmore, and Patricia Colley. Big up to y'all. Yeah, that's right. Big up to 7Q Pitt, Kwaku Asasi, Gregory Oliver, Greg, Antonio Feria, Barry Little, Alan Wiley, Mr. Valentino, Jason Hales, Black Men Being Brutally Honest, and Omni Americana. Big up to y'all. Big up to Cameron 87, Deshaun Nolly, Brian Peaks, Nelso, Kareen Not Karen, Dr. Rock, J. Charles, Mark Holt, Lee Ways, Jeffrey Speed, The Face, and Mark Swift. Big up. Big up to Show Me, Odd Collar, Donald Watts, Cozy Corner, HipHop.catv, Coach DC, Kashif Caldwell, I Am Black Man, Nichita, Mr. Blue Collar, and Barnolas. Big up to y'all. Big up to Kyle J. Sura, I'm Just Jules, TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Mr. Heat, Afro Shop, Sir Anthony, MLR, Universal 178, and Black's Word 404. Big up. Big up to Rashid Barnes, Aaron Smith, DH, C Truth the Revelator, Gold Professor, Author Unknown, Dr. Tiasan Johnson, Kalan Jakala, Ricky Dawson, Cedric Bowman, True 7360, BK Born Shaheed, James Washington, Hostile Adept, W. Pierre 1, Marvin Battle Jr., and I cannot forget my brother in heaven, Forrest Windu. Big up to y'all. And on the Patreon side, I want to give a big up to Javon Thompson, Tyrone Hampton, Jules Winfield, Romello Scuggs, Darnell Smith, Excalibur, Jason Warren, Soul Pen, Pursuer Prisoner, Taz, Kwaku 217, Dragon 59, Supreme Ibmore, Jay Bailey, Mr. Michi Momal, and Asangwa. Big up, man. Y'all deserve a round of applause. Thank you so much for supporting the Green Gorilla channel. Thank you. Y'all need the air horn too, man. And if you ever are having the predilection about how you can potentially support the Green Gorilla channel, well, here is how you do it. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. Today, I want to introduce you to my new membership program that consists of 5 levels where you can invest in the Green Gorilla channel on a monthly basis and receive level-specific perks. Memberships are special because they improve the quality of the content of the channel and will help me to be able to keep the channel going. Now, to participate in the Green Gorilla channel membership program, all you have to do is hit the join button, which is located right next to the subscribe button on my channel page. Now, for all of my subscribers who decide not to participate in my membership program, nothing will change. The content will keep coming the way it always has. Thanks for watching, and be careful out here, people. Bless. Alright, man, you know I'm back. I'm GG, man. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men get to express themselves freely. Straight up with no chasers, man. And today, I decided, to go off the beaten path and have a conversation about something. The harem. I don't know, man. What do you think a harem actually is? Let me cut the music off, man, because, I want to be focused when I talk about or discuss this. A lot of times when people think of a harem, they just think about a group of women who are, corralled together in order to be able to satiate the sexual desires of, a well-to-do man. And to some extent, that is the case. But I want you to think about the way in which it's done. The way this project is undertaken, especially in the Islamic world, as opposed to what's going on here in the US, or, contemporarily what's going on all over the Western world, where you got women who, they're off on their own, selling sex and exposing themselves to danger and risk. Point blank, period. That's exactly what's occurring. But what about a different kind of system? What about it? Well, today we're going to have a conversation about that. And, it's not going to draw a lot of people. But, it is what it is. I think, it's necessary to go into these discussions and to have these conversations so you can see what the difference is between the kind of system that we have now and systems that have been in place for hundreds of years, that are more safe, that are more ordered, that are more sophisticated than just women objectifying themselves, shaking their asses in front of cameras for likes and for money. What if there were a different kind of system? And then not only that, who runs it? Because, right now, the ideology everywhere that's ubiquitous, meaning that it is just about everywhere. The ideology is that, everywhere throughout the world, there was nothing more than some sort of pernicious patriarchy where women were just oppressed and dominated and controlled, and every action and every move that they made was somehow constrained. But is that really the case? Is that an accurate portrayal of the way that women and men interacted throughout the annals of time? I think it's a really ridiculous notion when you look at historical realities. And that's why I wanted to do this as well. So it's a twofold reason that I'm doing this. Okay? So I got 2 articles We're going to go through the articles. And thank you, Man Friday. I appreciate your support. And yes, if you support the Green Gorilla, man, and what I do here, man, please make sure to, strike the Cash App or to make a donation through either a super sticker or a super chat, man. I appreciate your support. But at any rate, let's just get right to this, man. I'm not gonna take all day. This should be relatively short and sweet. If you want to have a conversation about it, we can. If you don't, I'm gonna sign off. But I'm at least giving you the information. I'm giving you the information so that you can take it, digest it, and utilize it when you come into contact with people and you're having conversations about the kind of things that are happening in contemporary culture. Are there alternative ways? And were those ways as oppressive and as unjust as they're made out to be? And what was women's participation in these institutions? Are they, as they're projected as being by today's gynocrats? That's what I'll say. Were they that way? So let's just move into this world. Let's just take a gander and see what we can find here. So let's just go right into this craziness, man. What was life like as a member of the Sultan's harem in the Ottoman Empire? Now, of course, I'm talking about Islamic culture, which, women have a certain set of restrictions. They just can't show their bodies, expose their flesh to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. They have to be modest. They are made to be modest by means of Sharia. So a harem is, in all likelihood, not exactly what you imagine it to be. But the question is whether or not, again, there's a way of women being educated, being enculturated into a lifestyle where they are protected and where at the same time they're able to enjoy what contemporary women think they are enjoying without the risk associated with it. That's the question, all right? And oddly enough, the article is written by a woman, one Sarah Crocker. And here you have a picture of a woman in a harem, lounging on the couch with a hookah right next to her. Ain't no telling in the Muslim world, there might have been some opium in that hookah. No telling. But anyway, let's just get right into this article. And then, I'll comment as I go along, as I always do. Okay? So the article starts off by saying that for much of history, the harem of the Ottoman Empire was purposefully mysterious. Sequestered in the Ottoman Sultan's palace, the harem was a place that was physically set apart, not just from the rest of the court, but from the entirety of public life. So, in today's world, women want the freedom of movement. But of course, the freedom of movement is associated with risk. But we're talking about the Sultan's palace. But, there were harems in other places. They weren't just, confined to the Sultan's palace. But in this case, we're talking about the Ottoman Sultan's palace, where there were women there who were physically set apart from the rest of the court, meaning they didn't come into contact with a whole host of men. The women inside were connected to the Sultan, typically either by blood or by intimate relationship, and were expected to spend the vast majority of their lives apart from the world. Now, I know many women in today's culture, man, they don't want to have a system like this at all because they're going to consider it to be a constraint on their freedom, their mobility, their capacity to go out and see. Really, actually, to be perfectly honest, you know, if we're going to be honest, really and truly, if we're going to be candid, it's about women being able to go out and practice hypergamy, to be able to, you know, have sexual exploits on their own terms. Really, that's what this is about. If you want to be honest and open about it. But anyway, because of this withdrawal, there was a dearth of information about what it was really like to live in the harem. Western observers, many of whom began reporting back about the harem and other aspects of Ottoman life in the 19th century, weren't especially careful or sensitive. In other words, there's not a lot of information about what it was actually like to live as a woman in a harem. You had some Westerners who came to the Ottoman Empire and they recorded and registered their opinions about it, but they weren't really actually given access to it. Their accounts, influenced by their own assumptions and misconceptions, produced an inaccurate and sensationalist picture of the harem, as the journal Feminist Studies reports. Now, the author is a woman, so, you know, she's going to sprinkle in feminist ideology here and there and make reference to the work of feminists. But I think, you know, overall, I mean, I didn't read the article in depth, but I perused it. And from what I did glean from my perusal was that for the most part, this is not overbearing in relation to feminist interjection. So let me just say that. But anyway, now, however, more careful scholarship and accounts from Ottoman people and their descendants are producing a more complicated picture. Movement in and out of the harem was restricted and was also connected to practices that many will likely find troubling today, such as slavery. So yeah, we're talking about slavery. Yeah, the Ottomans had slaves, okay? Yet the harem was also a place where women could become incredibly powerful. Let me stop the music. It's important for people to understand this. It was a place where women could become incredibly powerful. So it's not just a place governed over by men, although men do, to some degree, participate in the governance of it. The harem was a place where women could become incredibly powerful, especially if they were intelligent and paid careful attention to Ottoman politics. That's another element I want to highlight. Do you think the women of today that engage in exhibitionism and, you know, their bodies to make money, that they have any dedication to the cultivation of their intelligence? Like, let's just be honest about this, man. These women are not seducing men with their intelligence. These are the type of women, man, who the only thing that they have in relation to sophistication is the ability to engage in conspicuous consumption. That's it, man. The only thing they can do is just show off what they're able to buy by exhibiting their body, by showing their flesh. That's it. If you ask them about politics, you ask them about culture, you ask them about anything related to refinement and sophistication, I guarantee you, bruh, they're going to miss the mark. You see these women, man, and what are they doing? All they're doing is shaking their asses. I'm just being honest. There's a lot more to the harem than women just being able to shake their asses. And that should be known. And men if they're really actually enculturated and sophisticated men, it's going to take more than just a shaking ass to gain their attention, especially for a prolonged period of time. If that's all you got is a shaking ass, then what's to say, about your value as a human being? I'm just asking the question. That's all you got? Is a pound of flesh that you're able to shake? Injections to go get, bags to buy, blunts to smoke, men to, sell sex to? Because women are out there selling it, bro. Okay? And they're putting themselves in precarious positions. But anyway, the article goes on to say, here's what life was really like for women in the Imperial Ottoman harem. And then, of course, she uses the word patriarchy, as women are wont to do. They always got to throw it out there. Patriarchy, religion, and culture all played a role in the rise of the harem. But one thing, and this is what's important, man, both Curry and Johnson have pointed this out. That patriarchy is not a system that only benefits men. And it's not a system that's only governed by men. We got to get this whole notion, this dualistic idea of all women in any hierarchical system where men also have a role in that hierarchy, a top role in it, that all women under it suffered miserably. We got to stop that bullshit. We got to put a stop to it. Okay? But anyway, so she's basically saying that patriarchy, religion, and culture all played a role in the rise of the harem. So it goes on to say that the harem of the Ottoman Sultan was no mere pleasure palace. It wasn't just a sex den, okay? Instead, it was a vital part of the imperial court and very necessary to the continuance of the throne. The entire concept of the harem was deeply linked to the cultural values and religious beliefs of the Sultan and his massive household. As Britannica reports, and I guess she's, making a reference to the Encyclopedia Britannica, a private place set aside for the women of a household has been around since before Islam reached much of the Middle East. See, this is your protection. Especially in a world where, it's not as safe as this one. We're talking about, pre-modern era. We're talking about a time frame before the advent of police and electric lighting and, a whole host of protections that are provided for people who exist within the kind of culture we live in now. Then the article goes on to say, however, it is true that the rules of Islamic harems were more likely to require that women keep themselves out of the public realm entirely. And see, this is, in the current world that we live in, women have demanded that they be a part of the public sphere. At one time, women were the governors, for the most part, of the private sphere. That's where they had control. And one can argue, it's a lot of power to be had within the context of the private sphere. But you had a group of women who insisted on, basically going into the public sphere. But of course, within the context of the public sphere, there's danger. And now you got to mix up and mingle along with men. And so basically what these women have done is they have colonized the public sphere. And they want to make it as safe as the private sphere was. But it's unattainable. It cannot be done. That's my claim. I'm going to stand on that. You cannot make the public sphere as safe as the private sphere. And then the women went on to say, that even the private sphere is not safe because men subject them to all kinds of abuses. So this is the kind of rhetoric and the kind of, kind of strategy that's being used, okay? So anyway, of course, Islamic law allows men to take multiple wives as long as they can support them. This meant that the luxurious court of the Ottoman Sultan could host a very large and complex harem. The Ottoman Empire used both wives and concubines from within the harem to produce heirs. It was all part of a hereditary system that passed power through patriarchal lines. So the more sons, the better, apart from all of the almost inevitable power struggles that resulted when too many sons vied for the throne. The use of non-married concubines was especially useful to the Sultan, as wives had rights that some rulers found troublesome. A concubine, it was thought, wouldn't tie up the works by grabbing power for her own family. Okay, so we already know, man, like Game of Thrones styles, when there's a whole bunch of heirs to a throne, they're going to compete for it. This is just the way the politics has been since time immemorial. You got brothers competing with one another to be the head, the head, I wanted to say NIC, but, the head honcho, put it that way. Okay? So they had wives and concubines, but they liked the concubines to the extent to which the concubines did not, have the same sort of rights or claims to the throne or public life that official wives did, okay? The harem women lived an ultra-secluded life. The original point of the Imperial Ottoman harem was to keep the women inside, cut off from the outside world. And why not? If you are a king, you are a ruler, and you're taking care of women and making sure that their every want and need is attended to, why would you want those women to go off and to consort with every other man in the vicinity? Now, we're talking about pre-modern era, pre-enlightenment. If I'm taking care of all your needs and everything you need, there ain't no need for you to be roaming around. Especially if I'm a king, I'm the head of this empire. Or I'm a man who basically has his stuff together. And so therefore, you ain't about to be running all around, screwing the pool guy, coming and going, in and out, causing me all kind of headaches and pain and trauma. No, you're going to sit tight, or otherwise you're going to get broken out. You free to go. If necessary, if it's the case that you don't want to be here, you want to, be under somebody else's care and sponsorship, you can go do that. But if you're going to be under my sponsorship, this is what it's going to be like. Bottom line. So anyway, they keep the women cut off from the outside world. Now, one can argue this creates safety, especially within the context of the harem, because the harem is primarily populated by women. So the only thing they have to fear, for the most part, is their interactions with one another. Those are where the power struggles are going to come from, okay? So anyway, that state was reflected in the very name of the place. As Boston College reports, harem has a variety of meanings, most of which typically translate as forbidden, sacred, inviolable. In other words, purity. You can't hit this. You can't get access to these women. These women are kept women. These women are taken care of. You can't just, nobody that's anybody could just have access to these women. These are women who have access only to the Sultan, the person who's sponsoring all of this. Everybody doesn't get a peek. Everybody doesn't get to come inside and touch it and kiss it and hug it and hit it and quit it and then, move on. No, that's not how this goes. The privacy of the harem was, in part, a demonstration of the harem keeper status. The richer and more prestigious a man was, the more he was able to maintain a large and complex harem of women who, in theory, would have nothing to do with the outside world. But today, you can't get a woman to say, I'm not going to run the streets. They want to run the streets, but we all know why. Let's just keep it real, man. We know why they want to get out here and hit these streets. They want to get out there and hit them streets to get that D. We know what it is. Anyway, that concept was also reflected in the architecture of the Ottoman Sultan's harem. According to Britannica, the harem of Topkapi Palace, which was the Sultan's main home beginning in the 16th century, was as physically isolated as it was socially cut off. Anyone who was to enter or exit the harem had to do so through a gate guarded by eunuchs who lived nearby. The Valide Sultan, or mother of the Sultan, lived at the center of the harem in lavish apartments, from which she could direct the daily lives and intrigues of the people living there. Okay, so if you don't know who the Valide Sultan is, it's the mother of the Sultan. So I'm not going to repeat it. The Valide Sultan is the mom. And she, to be quite honest, she's the one who runs the shit. We get more back to that more later. So the only person who didn't have to enter through the gate was, naturally enough, the Sultan himself. Within the Topkapi Palace, he was able to enter the harem through a hammam, or bath, connected to his mother's living quarters. Okay? So, like this whole notion of patriarchy, the Sultan's mother was in control for the most part of the harem. And she directed and guided the sexual life of the Sultan. Get that in your head. So this whole notion about patriarchy and men run it, okay, so a man might be an avatar, but a lot of times it's a woman behind that man pulling some very heavy strings. I'm just here to tell you. It ain't just one man ruling and governing over a whole bunch of women, making them do some things that they don't want to do. This whole notion about what reality is like, or what reality was like for women, all the way back to antiquity on up to now, is simply silly to me. But, this is what we got. Anyway, it goes on to say the harem was a beautiful place, but few could leave. Okay? Though the movement of women within and outside of the Imperial Ottoman harem was very restricted, their space was at least well appointed. According to the Topkapi Palace Museum, the harem in the Sultan's abode boasted over 300 rooms, 9 different baths, and even 2 separate mosques for worship. Many of these areas were richly decorated with colorful tile work, shining metals, and other fine details. And then you got a picture up here that kind of gives you some insight into what it looked like. That's like a hotel. You can see the picture, okay? So if you're connected to the Sultan, you're not going to be going in and out of the door like a hot girl. It ain't hot girl summer around this motherfucker. No, no, no. You don't get to roam around. Either you're going to get this protection and this provision on my terms, or you're going to hit the bricks. Now, tourists are able to enter the previously forbidden area as part of a tour. So now you can go to the Sultan's palace and see the quarters of the harem, okay? Once inside the harem, they gaze upon the richness of the space, though they may not instantly recognize some of the darker moments in the harem's history. Boston College reports that the twin kiosks of the harem, which is a small structure decorated with stained glass and once appointed with rich textiles and even a series of fountains, was actually a prison. Okay? And it's not a prison for who you would think either. Not a women's prison. During a particularly tense period in Ottoman history, the Sultan's male heirs were locked into the twin kiosk, set out to live a luxurious but a highly restricted life until they either died or ascended to the throne. So we're talking about male heirs, sons, not women locked up. But we don't want to take account of the ways in which men and boys were subjected to oppression and domination within the context of any hierarchical system. The only thing we do is talk about the women and the girls. Anyway, at least it was better than the previous practice of fratricide, wherein competitive brothers killed one another in a Game of Thrones style quest to become the Sultan. Then the next section says some harem women were enslaved, but some were not. Okay, so you got a picture of women in the harem. And, many of them, are artists. They're refined in art, these women. It's not like the only thing that they have the capacity to do is to shake their asses. It requires more. The Sultan required more of these women. Okay? So the status of the women within the Imperial Ottoman harem varied greatly. Some were official wives of the Sultan. Others, including a number of the concubines and servants within the harem, were enslaved. As the Imperial harem reports, slaves within the Ottoman Empire, including the harem, could not be Muslim. So if you were a slave, you couldn't be Muslim, okay? This meant that enslaved concubines were often taken in war and trained in different skills or arts by slave traders. Some of those women who found their way into the Sultan's harem traced their past through these slave traders and markets, presumably within private spaces as opposed to public markets. So they were privately traded, these slave concubines who were conquered during war, okay? Slavery, which existed before Islam, came to many countries throughout the region, was an everyday facet of life in the Ottoman Empire. The BBC reports that the Quran banned enslavement of Muslims by other Muslims, allowed for slaves to achieve their own freedom, and banned the mistreatment of slaves. Quite a few slaves, including those within the harem, had the opportunity to convert and eventually leave servitude behind. However, it was always possible that real life did not necessarily live up to this ideal. But we know what life was like as a slave in the United States. Once you was a slave forever. Ain't no getting out of it. No educating yourself out of it. No active devotion really actually to get yourself out of it other than, if the massa wanted to. There was no set of hurdles that you could jump over to establish or prove your worth or your worthiness to be removed from it. It was all based upon the desire and the whim of the massa in these United States, okay? Now we got to get to the ugly side for black people, especially black men, okay? Because the people who were the gatekeepers of the harem were eunuchs. And you know what a eunuch is. Ain't no need to question it. You know what a eunuch is. You know what happened to them. Controlling the interests of the harem and protecting the women inside were the near legendary eunuchs. As the Institute for Advanced Study reports, eunuchs were another feature of pre-Islamic societies that seems to have reached their zenith in the Ottoman Empire. Like some of the women inside the harem, they were typically slaves. Eunuchs were generally men who had been transported from East Africa as boys. According to the Ottomans, some white eunuchs were also taken from Christian areas like modern-day Armenia and Hungary, but typically didn't guard the harem. Okay? So they gave the job of guarding the harem to these boys from East Africa. Or people who had been there since boys from East Africa. Those were the guard dogs of the harem. Okay? At some point between their capture and their lives in the Ottoman court, they were castrated. So that's what makes you a eunuch, being castrated. Your nuts cut off. Okay? This, at least in the minds of the Sultan and his court, made them ideal guards for the harem. Eunuchs could be imposing and powerful, yet they lacked the necessary equipment to do anything untoward the women of the harem. Neither did they have family ties to distract them, given that they had been snatched away from their homes at young ages and couldn't start their own biological families. Despite, or perhaps because of their ties to one of the most restricted areas of the Sultan's palace, eunuchs stood to gain a lot of very real power. In an interview with the Middle East Studies Pedagogy Initiative, author Jane Hathaway explains that the chief eunuch could take advantage of vaguely defined roles within the court, especially before court roles became more defined in the 18th century. And here's the biggest part of it all that I want to, make understood. The Sultan's mother ruled over the harem. Basically, bottom line. Who run it? A woman. Now, I did a show about bonobos the other day. And you got a lot of feminists talking about like, okay, well, our culture should be more like bonobo culture because the women run it and they decide what males, have access to sex. And, the mothers get to govern the sex lives of the sons and who they actually are able to, copulate with. Well, here you have it. Bonobo shit. Here you have it. Right here. You have it right here. You say that's what you want? Well, here it is. That's what you say you want, right? Women in control and in charge. I guarantee you, man, her life within the context of the harem was powerful. To say that a mother does not have a profound influence over a son who is in a kingship or rulership, to say that she doesn't have a powerful impact or effect over this man's life is a lie. It's just some straight cap, man. Real talk. It's lie. Though it was secluded from the outside world, the harem still needed to function as its own entity. For much of its history as an Ottoman institution, this meant structure and hierarchy. And as a hierarchy so often entails, someone had to be at the top. For a significant portion of the Imperial harem's history, the person was the Sultan's own mother. Again, bomb. Who run the harem? Mama runs the harem. It's not just a place with women shaking their asses everywhere. That's what you would, get when you come to some Instagram bitches or something like that. That's what you get here. That's not what women were like in the harem. It was governed hierarchically by the mother. She runs it. She was known as the Valide Sultan. She was so powerful that she occasionally stepped in as regent. Now, we're talking about the Islamic world now, where everybody talks about the evil and the ominous patriarchy and that women in every turn and every step are governed over and controlled by men. But who's the head of the harem? The mama is. And we talking about the biggest and the largest harem. I'm pretty sure like men's mothers governed over harems, the well-to-do men, not necessarily the Sultan, but other well-to-do and influential and powerful men had powerful women, particularly their mothers, right there with them, making sure that these chicks was in check and wasn't running fucking game. Now you got boys raised in households where their mama's running game on them. Got them out here doing something strange for pieces of change. Whether it's be selling dope, whether it be running scams, a whole host of sick shit. But hey, if she wasn't stepping in as ruler, the Valide Sultan still was a pretty big deal. She wielded plenty of soft power when influencing her son. What mother does not have the capacity to direct the actions and give counsel to her son? Except one of these hot girl mamas, these gilfs. Grandmas are like, screwing or something like that. Come on, man. That's like, the admiral used to always say you got hard power and you got soft power. Okay? You got like real power and then you got soft power. Sometimes soft power can be more powerful than just going in and officially making the decision or like going in with guns blazing. That's Sand Dog I'm talking about, all right? Shout out to Sand Dog Rue. So she had soft power when influencing her son, who would have spent a significant portion of his childhood growing up at her side in the harem. Even after he moved to the royal throne, the Sultan's private apartments were located close to his mom's. And, it's really a tragedy out here today, man. A lot of these women's moms out here, man. I mean, a lot of these men's mothers ain't doing nothing, man, to vet the women that are just coming into contact with their sons' lives at all. What happened to that art? Like, son, leave that bitch alone. Stop. Fuck her. She ain't the right one for you, dog. Where are the mothers vetting these women that they come into contact with the sons? Right now, you got women who are so tied up and aligned with one another, they not even protecting their own lineages. They not even protecting their own legacies. And some of these women ain't got nothing but sons, and they not coming in and intervening and saying, I don't like her, dude. Something ain't right about her. Or I'm about to get her in check. She tripping. Oh, she out of line. I'm about to fix her ass. But even if you weren't the Sultan, but a woman in his harem, the Valide Sultan had a lot to do with the direction of your life. The Hurriyet Daily News reports that the Valide, the mother, was typically in charge of which harem women got access to the Sultan. Thank you, Scorpion Black. The more a concubine caught the attention of the ruler, the more likely she was to get perks like private rooms, servants, and her own chance at power, making the go-ahead from the Valide vitally important. So she's the scout. She the one vetting women inside of the context of the harem. And if you do get contact with the Sultan, you get perks. After all, you are being taken care of. You are being kept, right? So it goes on to say this: the Imperial Ottoman harem was hierarchical, very much so. The Valide Sultan ruled at the top of what was essentially a highly structured harem full of different titles, rankings, and seemingly endless movement within the hierarchy. It all gets the more confusing because, as All About Turkey reports, the Sultan title wasn't always reserved solely for the man ruling the Ottoman Empire. Beginning in the 16th century, this is pre-Enlightenment, okay? And if you don't know, we're talking about a time at which Europe was in the Dark Ages. The people who preserved art and philosophy were the Muslims, the followers of Islam and Allah. They were the ones that preserved Aristotle, Plato, the pre-Socratics, all of that. If it weren't for these people preserving this information, it would have been lost. The Western world wouldn't even be able to claim it now. It would have been gone because they destroyed it. They burned it all when they burned down the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. They tried to destroy it all. They called it pagan. So the only people who preserved it were the Muslims. Anyway, beginning in the 16th century, both men and women who were part of the family could potentially be called a sultan. Things got more complicated as the years progressed, so that by the 17th century, a harem woman might be a Kadeen sultan or a Haseki sultan, for instance. So what exactly was the power structure? According to the Ottomans, women could enter as a kimi, which is like an apprentice, right? When they got to the point where the Sultan might pick them, they were Ghettics. If they became pregnant and had a daughter, they got a nicer set of rooms and became a Kadeen. All About Turkey also points out that Kadeen could refer to being a favorite wife of the Sultan, while Iqbal was reserved for favorite but still unmarried concubines. Meanwhile, at the very bottom of the pyramid were Odalasekis, female servants who were deemed unworthy of making it to the Sultan's bedchamber. In other words, not all women in the harem was getting popped off. Some of them are just the servants to the other women there. Okay? But if you had a son, you were a Haseki. Okay? That brought even more privilege, though if the Sultan died, mothers of sons might have needed to watch their own necks because there was going to be a power struggle. Okay? So these women in the harem were in competition with one another. You think men are competitive? Watch women get competitive when, you know, their status is being threatened. So you got a bunch of women competing for the affection of the Sultan, and it wasn't, yeah, you could be a fire sex object, but it took more than you just to be some sort of shaking mound of flesh, twerking, shaking your ass to get the Sultan's attention. Because if he's going to have a son with you or a child with you, you got to be a quality woman. There has to be something more there. Any man should understand this, man. Like, a woman can have a fire body, but if that's all she got, bruh, she a liability. And if all she's doing is using her body to get cash, that means she's hoeing. Bottom line, man, she's hoeing, bruh. Now, who wants to tie his future into somebody that's dedicated to hoeing? Not I, said the cat. But that's just my opinion. Boston College reports that a Haseki was the Sultan's favorite and one of the few women who were in line to become the mother of a Sultan, one of the ultimate power roles for Ottoman women. To get there, she had to catch the eye of the ruler, both through her looks, talent, and charm. Notice how it's not just looks. She had to have looks, but she also had to have talent and charm. Now you got to ask yourself, these contemporary women that's doing what they're doing on Instagram, do they have talent? If the only talent you got is being able to pull up a tight pair of capri pants over your Brazilian butt lifted ass implant or butt injection anus, you know, your gluteus maximus, if that's all you got, you're not good enough. If she managed to do so and cemented her position by having children, she would benefit not only from the Sultan's attention, but from his royal accounts. So these women didn't want for anything. A Haseki Sultan could get double or even triple the amount of money that was allotted to other harem women. And then they got an account like one woman became so powerful that she went from an unknown concubine to the wife of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. So you can go from the fries to owning the franchise. Let me turn that off, man. You can go from the fries to owning a chain of restaurants. You can go from a concubine to a queen. According to the New York Times, she hailed from Ruthenia, now Belarus and Ukraine. She arrived at the harem when she was 13. She began an intensive course of study and was named Harem, or the Laughing One. Suleiman was so taken with her that he neglected the other harem women. Oh, she got him hooked on that. And she 13, man, come on, man. But anyway, much to their consternation, she was a foreigner. He probably, was infatuated by her exoticness or something like that. Suleiman even continued his relationship with her after she gave birth to a son, which typically meant that a woman ceased to visit the Sultan. She eventually achieved the extraordinary step of marrying the Sultan and became the Valide Sultan herself. Now, how's that for some climbing up the social ladder? And here's another part that I want to emphasize. And then I think I'm almost done with this. Being in the harem meant getting an education. If you're in the harem, you're being educated. You're going to learn something. You're going to become cultured. You're not just going to be shaking your ass, smoking blunts, spitting champagne, going from hotel to hotel, having encounters with strangers and shit. Different dudes that all they got on their mind is using you as a sexual object. Harem women were expected to be good companions outside of the bedroom. Get it? outside of the bedroom. They had to have a certain level of education if they were ever going to make it in the Ottoman harem. In some harems, according to Al Jazeera, that included a basic level of education in things like literacy. Most men and women in Europe during this time did not have the ability to read at all. They weren't even literate in Europe at all. I'm not saying there weren't any people who were literate, but the vast majority of the people, the inhabitants of the Western world, were illiterate, okay? But she had to have a basic level of education in things like literacy and household management. Things were different in the Imperial harem, however. Per the Ottomans, entrance into the harem also learned the musical arts. So they had to learn how to play an instrument, were instructed in Islamic religious practices, had to be taught how to dance, and were often well regarded for their storytelling prowess. The most successful or notorious women of the harem had to be as intelligent and capable as possible to make their marks on history. Now, what is the intelligence quotient qualification of these women nowadays who are sexual exhibitionists? I'm just asking the question. They also had to learn the ins and outs of Ottoman politics. Ask the average Instagram model about politics and see what the answer's gonna be. I'm just saying. The women educated each other regarding the ins and outs of the political sphere, whether that was through outright instruction or by careful observation. The Valide Sultan also had to be well educated and politically savvy for the sake of her son, who often relied on her guidance as he ruled over the Ottoman Empire. So she helped her son rule. This has always been the case. It ain't never been the case that men just did shit for themselves, by themselves. Even in the context of Islamic culture, especially in the Ottoman Empire. It ain't like it was just men calling the shots and making the decisions by themselves. And this is the story and the narrative we get from contemporary feminism, which I think is just anachronistic and is just inaccurate. But that's just my opinion. A succession of women once wielded extraordinary power from the harem. The rise of Harem, the wife of Suleiman the Magnificent, and I see you, Rais Majid. I hear what you say, what you said about the woman here. So the rise of Harem, the wife of Suleiman the Magnificent in the 1530s, may have at first seemed like an aberration, but the succeeding generations proved that Harem had kicked off an extraordinary period of time in which the women of the Ottoman Imperial harem held the most power they had ever achieved. Called the Sultanate of Women, this period of time spanned from about 1533, when Harem gained power, to the 1650s. The women in this period were preceded and followed by powerful women. Too, though few reached their heights. Harem's rise to power from an unknown harem woman to wife of the Sultan apparently unnerved enough people that those who followed her reigned largely as relatives of the Sultan. Besides advising the Sultan, they also commissioned architectural projects and took on charitable sponsorships to raise their esteem. According to the Women's Islamic Initiative in Spirituality and Equality, Nurbanu was another woman who was stolen from her home for life in someone's harem. This time she hailed from Italy and became the favorite of Selim, the heir apparent who would rule until 1574. as the mother of the next Sultan, Murad. Nurbanu had to conceal her own husband's death until her son could return to the safety of the court, where she advised him for years and even communicated with other powerful women, such as Frances Catherine de Medici. Okay? So look, I can go on and on and on about with this article, okay? But I mean, ultimately, we're having a conversation about what life was like as a member of the Sultan's harem in the Ottoman Empire, or in the Islamic world in general. What was life like? Well, they were provided for, they were protected, and they were governed over by other women. And the mother of the Sultan had a great deal of influence over the activities of a son. But this is just going to be the case in life if you got a good mother in general anyway. But at least it's a system in balance to some degree. I can go on and on. But what do you have now? You have a bunch of Instagram thoughts who out there running renegade. What system you think is better? You tell me. I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of bullshit. I'm going to give you some education. That's what I do here on the Green Gorilla channel, man. I'm going to take a quick break. If you want to have a conversation about this, we can. If not, I'm about to sign off. I'm getting hot. I got the AC bumping, but it's still hot up in this joint when I start to get animated. I'll be right back, man. I left a link in the chat. I want to know what you think, man. Do feel free to chime in. But if nobody decides to chime in, I'm about to get the hell out of here, man. So, quick commercial break. I'll be right back. My bad, I forgot to turn that off. But anyway, man, all I'm trying to do is make the point in the case that the harem was a system whereby women were actually protected and provided for. But in this world, we got women who say they want protection. No, you don't. You just want to be able to rip and run the streets because you want to be for these streets. Let's just keep it a buck. You want to be able to go out here and do what it is, whatever you want to do. With any miscellaneous guy, for any miscellaneous reason. But you got to ask yourself, is that smart? Is it wise? Is it ordered? Is it getting you to the places where you want to be? That's up for you to decide. I mean, as women. That's up for y'all, man. But anyway, since I got no takers, man, I'm about to bounce up out of here, man. I got some food to eat. I'm about to ready to get to it too. So I'll holler at y'all on the next one, man. I'll be hitting it in with Ronald Neal tomorrow, Dr. Neal, and we're going to talk about Afghanistan. So I'll holler at y'all on the next one, dog. Peace.